The Texas sunset bleeds crimson across miles of rugged borderland as four heavily armed men creep through the mesquite brush toward an isolated ranch house. Through military-grade night vision goggles, the Cartel scout watches a solitary woman moving around her property, seemingly vulnerable and alone. The men exchange confident smiles. This remote border ranch will make the perfect new smuggling route. What they don't realize is that their target, former Army Major Cassandra Reeves, doesn't just raise cattle on her family's land. She once commanded the most elite canine tactical unit in Afghanistan, and her 4 retired war dogs still respond to commands that don't exist in any civilian training manual. Miles of barbed wire fence line stretch across the rough southern edge of the Double R Ranch, marking not just the boundary of Cassandra Reeves' property, but also the invisible line between 2 nations. Cass walks the perimeter as she does every evening, her boots crunching on sun-baked earth as she checks for breaks or signs of trespass. The ranch has been in her family for 3 generations, but only in the last 5 years has it become what locals call hot property, prime real estate for cartel smuggling operations. The setting sun casts long shadows as Cass pauses to adjust her worn Stetson. At 42, her face bears the weathered lines of someone who has spent equal time squinting against desert sun and peering through gun sights in combat zones. 15 years in Army Special Operations, followed by 3 tours with the elite. Canine tactical units had left her with skills rarely found on a Texas cattle ranch, and scars both visible and hidden. "Come on, Ajax," she calls, her voice carrying across the open space. From the shadows of a nearby mesquite thicket, a massive German shepherd materializes, moving with the silent efficiency that once made him the most feared detection dog in Kandahar province. Despite his age, nearly 9 now, Ajax moves with precision, his dark eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. He's not the only one. From different positions around the property, 3 other forms move in coordinated patterns. Athena, a Belgian Malinois with uncommon intelligence; Brutus, a Dutch shepherd with specialized tracking abilities; and Colt, a black Labrador retriever trained in explosives detection. All 4 dogs had served with distinction in combat zones before. Cass had arranged their retirement alongside her own. To casual observers, they might appear to be ordinary ranch dogs, but their movements reveal years of specialized training. The way they maintain distance from each other, creating overlapping zones of surveillance. The precise manner in which they check wind direction and respond to nearly imperceptible hand signals. As Cass reaches the southern fence line, Ajax freezes. His ears prick forward, body tensing in the alert posture Cass recognizes immediately. Something has triggered his training. She doesn't react visibly, continuing her walk while subtly tapping twice on her leg. The silent command for Ajax to verify the detection. The shepherd circulates casually, crossing the area again before returning to Cass's side, pressing deliberately against her knee. Confirmation. They aren't alone. "Good boy," she whispers, her hand dropping to the concealed Sig Sauer at her hip. A habit from years in combat zones she never abandoned, even in the supposed peace of her family ranch. Her other hand moves to the tactical radio clipped to her belt, a direct line to the border patrol station 20 miles away. But Cass hesitates. Border patrol is stretched thin across hundreds of miles, and response times to her remote location have grown longer each year. County Sheriff isn't much better. Dylan Carter is a good man with limited resources. Whatever Ajax has detected, she'll need to handle it herself, at least initially. Inside the ranch house, the security system Cass had installed upon her return from Afghanistan displays feeds from carefully concealed cameras covering the property's perimeter. The system, far more sophisticated than anything her neighbors employed, had been a necessity rather than paranoia. 3 previous attempts by cartel scouts to access her land had convinced her that the R's isolation and strategic location made it a prime target. Cass moves toward the house with practiced casualness, nothing in her posture betraying her awareness of unwelcome visitors. Ajax follows at perfect heel position, while in the distance the other 3 dogs continue their seemingly random movements across the property, movements that actually constitute a practiced containment pattern developed for combat zones. Once inside, Cass activates the security displays, her eyes narrowing as thermal imaging reveals what Ajax had already detected. 4 Vigors moving through the brush along her southern fence line. Their movement patterns speak of training. These aren't desperate migrants looking for passage, but tactically positioned operators with discipline and likely military backgrounds. Cartel enforcers, then, the specialized kind that cartels recruited. In from former military and police. Predictable, she mutters, recognizing the approach vector. The arroyo that cuts across her southern boundary provides natural cover, especially in the fading light. It's exactly where she would have positioned an advance team during her operational days. Cass doesn't reach for her phone to call for help. Instead, she moves to a locked cabinet tucked beneath the staircase, her fingers dancing across a biometric scanner. The cabinet swings open to reveal equipment that would seem out of place on a cattle ranch. Tactical gear arranged with military precision, specialized communications equipment, and an array of weapons that would impress many police armories. This isn't the first time cartel scouts have tested her boundaries, but something about the current approach feels different. Previous incursions had been tentative, single scouts evaluating potential routes. 4 men moving with tactical discipline suggests something more determined, more dangerous. As she straps on a tactical vest, Cassie's mind shifts into the operational framework that had once been as natural as breathing. Assessment, resources, response options. Her years commanding canine tactical teams had taught her to leverage every advantage, and right now, her greatest assets are the 4 dogs who had once cleared buildings in Kandahar and tracked high-value targets through mountain passes. Cass activates a second radio frequency, not the one connected to local law enforcement, but a secure channel linked to specialized receivers on each dog's collar. A precaution that had seemed excessive when she'd first installed the system, but one she's now grateful for. Security protocol engaged, she speaks clearly into the radio. Through the window, she watches as all 4 dogs immediately transition. From their casual movements to alert postures, each taking predetermined positions around the property. It's a command sequence developed for forward operating bases when intelligence suggested imminent threats, a system designed to transform 4 animals into a coordinated security perimeter. The ranch's exterior lights remain off as darkness settles across the land. Cass moves through the house, systematically checking windows and access points. The property had been retrofitted with reinforced doors and impact-resistant windows after her return, modifications her neighbors had attributed to PTSD-driven paranoia rather than practical security concerns. Through her thermal imaging equipment, Cass tracks the 4 figures as they reach her fence line. They move with practiced efficiency, using wire cutters to create an opening before slipping onto her property. Their weapons, visible now in the enhanced imaging, are military-grade, far beyond the usual Cartel Street arsenal. Whatever their mission, these men have come prepared for significant resistance. Cass weighs her options. Direct confrontation would be risky, even with her background. Border Patrol reinforcements would take at least 30 minutes to arrive, assuming they could spare the manpower. Sheriff Carter might respond faster, but he'd be outgunned and outnumbered. She touches the radio again. "Surveillance mode. Maintain distance," she commands. Through the monitors, she watches as the dogs acknowledge the command, becoming nearly invisible as they use terrain features and shadows to maintain visual contact with the intruders while remaining undetected. The cartel team moves with practiced coordination, establishing a perimeter around what appears to be their primary target, her barn. Cass's jaw tightens as she realizes their likely objective. The large structure houses not just farm equipment, but also her private workshop, where she trains working dogs for police departments across 3 states. More importantly, it provides clear line of sight across much of the border terrain, an ideal observation post for monitoring law enforcement movements. As the men approach the barn, Cass makes her decision. Direct confrontation would be dangerous, but allowing them to establish a foothold on her property would be worse. She reaches for another piece of equipment from the cabinet, a specialized tactical headset designed for canine handlers in combat situations, allowing silent command transmission to the dog's receivers. "Time to remind them whose territory they're on," she whispers, checking her weapon before moving toward the back door. Whatever these men want, they've made a critical error in target selection. The Double R Ranch isn't just another vulnerable border property. It's the home of a woman who once commanded the most lethal K-9 unit in military history, and neither Cass nor her dogs have forgotten their training. Outside, the Texas night wraps around her like a familiar cloak as she moves silently toward the approaching threat, her dogs already in position and awaiting her command. The intruders believe they've found an easy target, a lone woman on an isolated ranch. They're about to discover how catastrophically wrong that assessment is. The barn's weathered doors stand partially open, just as Cass had left them earlier that afternoon. Through her tactical headset, she monitors the cartel team's movements as they approach the structure with practiced caution. Their leader, a tall man with a distinctive scorpion tattoo crawling up his neck, signals to his companions with hand gestures that speak of formal military training. These aren't street thugs. They move with the coordination of men who've seen combat. "Perimeter check," Scorpion Tattoo commands in accented English. 2 of his men break off, circling the barn while scanning for security systems or alarms. They miss the nearly invisible pressure plates Cass had installed months ago, sensors that now silently alert her to their exact positions through her tactical pad. Cass taps her earpiece twice, activating the secure channel to her dogs. "Surveillance only. Shadow protocol," she whispers. Through her night vision equipment, she watches as Ajax and Brutus acknowledge the command, maintaining visual contact with the intruders while using natural cover to remain undetected. Athena and Colt circle wider, establishing a secondary containment perimeter, a tactic they'd perfected in the mountains of Afghanistan when tracking high-value targets. From her concealed position behind a storage shed 50 yards from the barn, Cass observes the cartel team with growing concern. Their equipment betrays significant resources, encrypted tactical radios, advanced body armor visible beneath civilian clothing, and weapons modifications that would cost thousands on the black market. This isn't a simple scouting mission for a smuggling route. They're equipped for something more substantial. The team's methodical search of the barn's exterior continues as the two men check for cameras, alarms, or other security measures. They're thorough but overconfident, missing the subtle indicators that would alert more experienced operators to the property's defensive measures. One passes directly over a buried motion sensor without noticing the slight disruption in the soil pattern. The other fails to spot the nearly invisible fishing line stretched across a likely approach vector, not a trap, but a simple alert system that would cause distinctive vibrations on Cass's tactical pad if triggered. Looks clean. One of the men reports rejoining Scorpion Tattoo at the barn entrance. No visible security. Place is as dead as reported. Cass's eyebrow raises at this. As reported. Someone has been watching her property, studying her routines. The realization sends a cold shiver down her spine that has nothing to do with the cooling night air. This isn't random. They've been planning this perhaps for weeks. Scorpion Tattoo nods, seemingly satisfied with the assessment. Manuel, establish overwatch. Diego with me. Rafael, secure our exit. His Spanish carries the distinctive accent of northern Mexico, but his tactical commands mirror US military protocols. Another warning sign. Cartels had become increasingly sophisticated in recent years, recruiting former military personnel from both sides of the border. Manuel climbs to the barn's hayloft with his rifle, establishing a sniper position with clear sight lines to the ranch house. Diego follows Scorpion Tattoo into the main structure, while Rafael retreats to secure their entrance point at the fence line. The separation creates tactical vulnerabilities that Cass immediately recognizes. They've split their forces, confident in their assessment that the property presents minimal threat. Through her headset, Cass hears snippets of their communication as they begin to explore the barn's interior. Their conversation confirms her suspicions. This isn't about establishing a smuggling route. The boss wants this place operational by the end of the week, Scorpion Tattoo says. Clear out whatever livestock is here. We'll need the main structure for storage and the high ground for surveillance. What about the woman? Diego asks. There's a pause before Scorpion Tattoo responds. Make it look like she left. No body, no investigation. By the time anyone notices, we'll be established. Cass feels a cold anger settle in her chest. They're planning to take her property and dispose of her in the process. The tactical part of her mind calculates options, while the ranch owner in her bristles at the audacity. The double R has been in her family for generations, survived drought and economic hardship. She hadn't spent 15 years in combat zones, only to lose it to cartel thugs. A metallic click echoes through her headset as one of the men discovers the reinforced door to her workshop. Jefe, this door has a serious lock, military grade. Break it open, comes the immediate response. Cass tenses. The workshop contains not just her dog training equipment, but also documentation of her military career, photographs, service records, and specialized gear that would immediately reveal her background. If they discover who she really is, their cautious approach would transform into something far more aggressive. She needs to act, but direct confrontation remains risky. 4 armed men with military training present significant danger, even for someone with her background. Cass taps her Communication device, switching to the command frequency for her dogs. Disruption protocol, non-lethal, she whispers. Through her night vision, she watches as Athena and Colt acknowledge the command, breaking from their surveillance positions and moving with purpose toward predetermined locations. Inside the barn, Scorpion, Tattoo, and Diego continue their exploration, unaware of the response their presence has triggered. Manuel maintains his overwatch position in the hayloft, rifle trained on the darkened ranch house where he assumes Cass is sleeping. The first indication that something is wrong comes when Raphael's radio check goes unanswered. Scorpion Tattoo attempts to raise him twice more before signaling to Diego. Check the perimeter. Find out why Raphael isn't responding. Diego moves cautiously toward the barn entrance, weapon raised. As he steps outside, motion-activated lights suddenly flood the yard with harsh illumination, momentarily blinding him. The tactical advantage of darkness vanishes in an instant. What the? Diego raises his arm to shield his eyes, inadvertently lowering his weapon. From his position in the hayloft, Manuel calls out a warning. Movement! East perimeter! Something's coming fast! Before Diego can react, Colt emerges from the shadows, moving with the focused intensity that once made him the most feared detection dog in his military unit. The Black Labrador doesn't attack. He doesn't need to. His sudden appearance, combined with the specialized harness that makes his profile appear larger and more threatening in the harsh light, creates precisely the distraction Cass had intended. Diego stumbles backward, raising his weapon toward the approaching dog. His finger tightens on the trigger, but before he can fire, a distinctive whistling sound cuts through the night air, followed by a dull thud. Diego looks down in confusion at the tranquilizer dart protruding from his thigh, then collapses to his knees as the fast-acting sedative takes effect. Cass lowers the specialized tranquilizer rifle, equipment left over from her canine unit days when they sometimes needed to subdue aggressive dogs without harming them. The dosage, calibrated for a man of approximately Diego's weight, will keep him unconscious for at least 30 minutes. One down, she whispers, already moving to a secondary position as Manuel opens fire from the hayloft, bullets kicking up dirt where she had been moments before. Inside the barn, Scorpion Tattoo barks urgent commands into his radio. Diego is down. Manuel, do you have eyes on the shooter? Negative. Just shadows and that dog. Wait, there's another one. From the opposite side of the barn, Athena makes her presence known, her distinctive bark echoing across the property. The Belgian Malinois doesn't approach. She merely creates noise and movement, dividing the remaining men's attention exactly as she was trained to do during building clearing operations in urban combat. Scorpion Tattoo emerges from the barn, weapon raised, scanning for threats. His training is evident in his movement. He maintains cover, checks corners, presents minimal target profile. But his experience, whatever its source, hadn't prepared him for an opponent who once trained. Elite military canine units. Raphael, report position, he demands into his radio. The continued silence from their perimeter man clearly unnerves him. Manuel, maintain overwatch. I'll secure Diego and retreat to the fence line. Cass observes this through her night vision, noting how quickly their coordinated operation has descended into defensive posture. The introduction of unknown elements, the lights, the dogs, the tranquilizer, has disrupted their confidence. They're still dangerous, but now they're reacting. Rather than executing their plan, she taps her communication device again. Ajax, Brutus, Containment Pattern Alpha. The command activates a maneuver developed for urban combat. The two dogs will maintain distance but use coordinated movement and noise to create the impression of multiple threats approaching from different directions. Manuel's rifle cracks again as he fires at shadows, wasting ammunition on phantom targets. Through her scope, Cass can see his growing panic as barks and movement seem to come from all directions, creating the impression of a much larger force converging on their position. Scorpion Tattoo reaches Diego's unconscious form, dragging him toward cover while maintaining fire discipline despite the chaos. His experience shows in his refusal to waste ammunition on uncertain targets. He checks Diego's pulse, discovers the tranquilizer dart, and his expression darkens with understanding. "We're being hunted," he says into his radio, voice tight with controlled anger. "Whoever owns this ranch isn't what we were told." In the hayloft, Manuel's breathing becomes more erratic as multiple dog forms seem to materialize and vanish around the perimeter. "There's too many. We need to pull back." "Hold position," Scorpion Tattoo orders, but his command lacks conviction. The operation is unraveling, the simple occupation of an isolated ranch, transforming into something far more dangerous. Cass moves toward the fence line, where Raphael should be guarding their exit point. She finds him already restrained. Zip ties, securing his wrists and ankles, a field dressing wrapped around a bite wound on his forearm. Brutus had reached him first, implementing the capture and hold protocol that had been the dog's specialty during deployment. Raphael's eyes widen with fear as Cass emerges from the darkness, tranquilizer rifle in hand. "Who are you?" he asks, his accent thickening with stress. Cass doesn't answer immediately, securing his weapons and checking his restraints. The Cartel team had clearly been given false intelligence about the ranch and its owner, information that had led them into a situation they weren't prepared for. "Someone you should have researched better before trying to take my home." She finally responds, voice calm despite the circumstances. She administers a measured dose of the same sedative used on Diego, enough to ensure Raphael remains subdued, but conscious enough to answer questions later. Through her headset, she hears Scorpion Tattoo frantically trying to coordinate a retreat. The operation has deteriorated from offensive to survival in minutes. His remaining team, disoriented by the lights, the dogs, and the invisible attacker who seems to anticipate their every move. Cass checks her tactical pad, confirming the positions of her dogs and the two remaining cartel members. The advantage is firmly hers now. Two intruders neutralized, the others isolated and increasingly desperate. But dangerous men are most lethal when cornered, and these men have already declared their intentions regarding her fate. She taps her communication device once more. Final phase, neutralize remaining threats. In the distance, Ajax acknowledges the command with a single bark, a sound that echoes across the property like a promise. The hunt has only just begun. Scorpion Tattoo crouches behind a stack of hay bales, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool night air. The operation that should have been simple, secure an isolated ranch, eliminate its lone female owner, establish a new cartel outpost, has disintegrated into chaos. Two of his men are down, unresponsive on their communication channels, and the remaining team member is pinned in the hayloft, increasingly frantic as shadowy forms move through the darkness around the barn. "Manuel, conserve ammunition," he hisses into his radio as another burst of gunfire erupts from the hayloft. Fire only on confirmed targets. There's too many of them. Manuel's voice cracks with strain. They're everywhere. The dogs and someone else, professional, military. Scorpion Tattoo's mind races through possibilities. Their intelligence had been specific. A single woman in her 40s, no security beyond basic ranch measures, isolated location with minimal contact with neighbors or law enforcement. The perfect, soft target. Nothing in their briefing mentioned trained military dogs or tactical expertise. Someone had set them up for failure, or worse, deliberately sent them into a trap. From his position, he watches as another motion-activated light triggers near the fence line, illuminating nothing but empty space. Yet something had triggered it, something moving with enough tactical awareness to immediately disappear before being spotted. These weren't typical security measures. This was methodology he recognized from his own training with Mexican Special Forces before he'd been recruited by the Cartel. "This isn't right," he mutters, checking his remaining ammunition. "Manuel, we're pulling back. Rendezvous at Extraction Point Alpha." No response comes through his earpiece. Scorpion Tattoo tries again, urgency creeping into his voice. "Manuel, acknowledge." The silence that follows sends a chill through him that has nothing to do with the night air. Cautiously, he raises his tactical scope toward the hayloft, where Manuel had established his overwatch position. Through the enhanced optics, he can see the rifle still positioned at the opening, but no movement behind it. Something has neutralized his last remaining team member without a sound. For the first time in years, genuine fear washes through him. Whoever owns this ranch isn't just another border resident with a shotgun and misplaced courage. This is someone with training, with resources, with tactical experience that rivals or exceeds his own. A low growl from behind freezes him in place. Slowly, calculating his options, Scorpion Tattoo turns to find himself staring into the amber eyes of a Belgian Malinois. Athena stands 10 feet away, her posture displaying the perfect balance between aggression and control that marked elite military working dogs. She doesn't charge, doesn't need to. Her position cuts off his most obvious escape route, forcing him to consider less optimal alternatives. "Easy, dog," he whispers, assessing whether he can get a shot off before the animal attacks. The Malinois doesn't respond to his voice, maintaining her position with unnerving discipline. This isn't a ranch dog protecting territory. This is a trained tactical asset implementing containment protocols. Scorpion Tattoo's radio crackles to life, startling him enough that his finger twitches against his trigger guard. A woman's voice comes through his own communication device. Somehow she's hacked or intercepted their frequency. "Your men are neutralized," the voice states calmly, without emotion or bravado. "You're surrounded, outmatched, and rapidly running. Out of options. I'm giving you one chance to surrender before this gets worse for you." He tenses, scanning his surroundings for the source of the voice. "Who are you?" he demands, struggling to maintain his composure. A figure steps from the shadows 30 yards away, a woman silhouetted against the barn lights. She holds what appears to be a tactical rifle, her stance betraying years of professional training. Even at this distance, there's nothing in her posture that suggests hesitation or fear. Someone who doesn't appreciate armed men invading her property and planning to dispose of her body, she responds, her voice carrying across the distance. With unexpected clarity, someone who gave you a chance to surrender that you're currently wasting. Scorpion Tattoo calculates his odds. One shot might be possible before the dog attacks, but the woman's position and stance suggest she's equally prepared to fire. 2-to-1 odds aren't ideal, especially when both opponents demonstrate tactical expertise. "My employers won't stop with me," he calls back, attempting to regain some leverage. "They want this land. Today, tomorrow, next week. They'll keep coming. This border is worth too much to them." The woman takes a step forward, her features becoming clearer in the ambient light. Something about her posture triggers recognition. In him, a distinctive way of holding a tactical position that he's seen before, but not from ordinary law enforcement. "Your employers should have researched who owns this land before sending you to die on it," she replies. The clinical detachment in her voice unnerves him more than anger would have. This isn't someone operating on emotion or fear. This is someone implementing methodical protocols developed through professional experience. "You have 15 seconds to place your weapon on the ground and kneel with your hands behind your head," she continues. "After that, my dog makes the decision for you." As if understanding her words, the Malinois takes a single step forward, muscles tensing visibly beneath her coat. Scorpion Tattoo has seen military working dogs in action during his service years, has witnessed firsthand what their specialized training enables them to do to a human target. The mechanical efficiency with which they can disable even trained combatants. His mind races through diminishing options. Direct confrontation presents unacceptable risk. Retreat is cut off. Surrender means failure, and the cartel doesn't tolerate failure. For a moment, indecision paralyzes him, tactical training warring with survival instinct. The decision is made for him when a second dog materializes from the darkness to his right. A massive German shepherd moving with the silent efficiency that marks the highest levels of military canine training. Suddenly he's facing 3 opponents, positioned in a perfect triangulation that eliminates any potential escape vector. Scorpion Tattoo slowly lowers his weapon, tactical mind acknowledging defeat even as his pride rebels against it. He places the gun on the ground and rises to a kneeling position, hands behind his head in the universal posture of surrender. "Smart choice," the woman acknowledges, approaching with practiced caution, maintaining optimal distance while the dogs hold their containment positions. Athena secure, the Belgian Malinois responds instantly, circling behind him to establish a guard position that would enable immediate response if he attempted to resist. The German shepherd maintains a forward position, eyes never leaving his, face, body tensed and ready. As the woman draws closer, recognition finally clicks into place. Scorpion Tattoo's eyes widen as tactical puzzle pieces assemble into a coherent picture. "You're military," he states, not a question, but a realization. "Special operations." "Was," she corrects, securing his wrists with tactical restraints. Her movements are efficient, practiced, the muscle memory of someone who has done this hundreds of times in less controlled environments than her own property. "Now, I'm just a rancher trying to live peacefully on my family's land." The dogs, he continues, glancing at the German shepherd still watching him with unnerving focus. "They're not just pets. They're better trained than your men," she interrupts, checking his restraints before retrieving his weapon and clearing it with practiced movements. "And more disciplined." In the distance, emergency lights become visible on the horizon. Law enforcement responding, though whether summoned by the woman or alerted by the gunfire, remains unclear. Scorpion Tattoo feels the last vestiges of his mission collapsing around him. Failure, capture, the cartel's inevitable response to both. "My employers will send others when we don't return," he warns, desperation creeping into his voice. "Better equipped, more men. They won't underestimate you a second time." The woman studies him with clinical detachment. In the improved lighting, Scorpion Tattoo can see details he missed before. The faded scar running along her jawline, the watchful alertness in eyes that have seen combat, the weathered hands of someone equally comfortable with weapons and ranch work. "Then they'll make the same mistake you did," she responds simply, assuming this is a soft target rather than recognizing a hardened perimeter. From the barn, a third dog emerges, dragging something behind it. Manuel's tactical vest, the man himself nowhere to be seen but presumably secured elsewhere. The dog, a Dutch shepherd based on its distinctive markings, drops the vest at the woman's feet before taking up a guard position opposite the German shepherd. 3 specialized military working dogs, Scorpion Tattoo observes, professional assessment momentarily overriding his precarious situation. Multidisciplinary unit. You weren't just military, you were canine unit commander. Something flickers across the woman's face. Surprise, perhaps, at his knowledge of specialized military structures. "Former Major Cassandra Reeves," she confirms after a moment's consideration. 38th Tactical K9 Unit, 3 tours in Afghanistan. Now just a Texas rancher who wants to be left alone. The approaching law enforcement vehicles are close enough now that their sirens become audible across the property. Scorpion Tattoo's shoulders slump slightly as the full implications of his failure settle over him. His team neutralized operation, compromised, and worse, intelligence catastrophically wrong about the target. "Your cartel made a critical error tonight," Major Reeves continues, checking his restraints one final time as the first Border Patrol vehicle turns onto her access road. They assumed an isolated female ranch owner would be vulnerable. They failed to research who actually owns this property. "Javier won't stop," Scorpion Tattoo warns, referring to his cartel commander. "This section of border is too valuable. The organization has invested too much in establishing this corridor." Major Reeves considers this, her expression unreadable in the half-light. "Then Javier will learn what others before him discovered in Afghanistan. Some territories aren't worth the cost of taking them." The Border Patrol vehicles pull into the yard, lights painting the scene in alternating red and blue. 2 agents emerge, hands on their holstered weapons as they take in the tableau. The restrained man, the vigilant dogs, the woman standing with military bearing beside her captive. "Major Reeves," the lead agent acknowledges with obvious familiarity. "Got your alert. 4 hostiles. All accounted for," she confirms. 2 sedated near the fence line, 1 secured in the storage shed, this one ready for transport. Her tone shifts to something more official, a verbal report delivered with military precision. "Armed incursion with intent to establish a cartel outpost. They were equipped for long-term occupation and had specific orders regarding my elimination." The agent nods, unsurprised by either her efficiency or the situation itself. "3rd attempt on your property this month. They're getting more determined." "And better equipped," she agrees, handing over Scorpion Tattoo's weapon and radio. "Military grade, communications, tactical approach, formal training evident in their movement patterns." Cartel recruitment is improving. As the agents secure him for transport, Scorpion Tattoo maintains eye contact with Major Reeves. "This isn't over," he states, not as a threat, but as tactical assessment. She returns his gaze with the steady confidence of someone who has faced worse threats in harsher environments. "No," she agrees, "it isn't. But next time, your cartel will know exactly who they're dealing with. That might encourage them to reconsider this particular section of border." The Belgian Malinois presses against her leg, alert but calm, now that the threat has been contained. Major Reeves rests her hand on the dog's head, in a gesture that communicates partnership rather than ownership. The bond between handler and tactical canine, evident even in this simple interaction. As the Border Patrol agents lead him toward their vehicle, Scorpion Tattoo glances back at the property. The ranch house standing silent and undisturbed, the tactical dogs now arranged in a perfect perimeter formation around their handler, the woman herself observing his departure with the detached professionalism of someone accustomed to neutralizing threats. The cartel had drastically miscalculated tonight. They had seen an isolated woman on a valuable piece of border property and assumed vulnerability. Instead, they had stumbled onto the retirement home of an elite military canine commander and her equally specialized team. More importantly, they had turned a neutral resident into an active opponent, someone with the training, resources, and tactical experience to cause significant problems for their border operations. As the patrol car Doctor closes behind him, Scorpion Tattoo recognizes the strategic turning point this night represents. The cartel's expansion plans for this section of border haven't just been delayed. They've awakened something far more dangerous than anticipated. They've made an enemy of someone trained to hunt targets through the most hostile territories. On Earth, the war for this borderland has just begun. 3 days after the failed raid, Javier Mendoza slams his fist against the polished mahogany desk in his hacienda office. The cartel lieutenant's usual composure has shattered in the face of his team's catastrophic failure and subsequent disappearance into U.S. custody. Border Patrol had made a point of publicly processing all 4 captured men, a deliberate message to the cartel that this particular incursion had been dealt with. "How did we miss this?" he demands, glaring at the intelligence officer standing rigidly before him. 4 of my best men captured by a single woman on a cattle ranch." The intelligence officer, a former Mexican federal police analyst recruited through a combination of bribery and threats, shifts uncomfortably. The property records show only Cassandra Reeves, age 42, owner of a modest cattle operation. There was nothing in local records indicating military background. Yet somehow, this rancher disabled a team led by Miguel, Javier counters, referring to Scorpion Tattoo by his real name. A man with special forces training and 8 successful cartel operations. The intelligence officer slides a folder across the desk. "We've compiled updated information since the incident. Cassandra Reeves isn't just any veteran. Major Cassandra Reeves commanded specialized K-9 tactical units during 3 deployments in Afghanistan. Her teams were responsible for some of the most successful compound raids against high-value targets in Kandahar province." Javier flips through the dossier, his expression darkening as he absorbs details of Major Reeves's military career. Commendations for tactical excellence, special operations against heavily defended compounds, specialized training in perimeter defense, counter-surveillance, and rural tactical operations. The dogs, he murmurs, pausing at a photograph showing Reeves with 4 military working dogs in Afghanistan. The animals stand at alert around her, their specialized tactical vests marked with military insignia. Miguel mentioned trained military dogs in his initial radio transmission before we lost contact. She retired from active service 5 years ago, the intelligence officer continues. Took over her family's ranch after her father's death. What's significant is that she arranged for her canine unit's dogs to be retired with her. Unusual, but apparently approved due to her exceptional service record. Those animals are worth millions in specialized training. Javier studies the photographs. More carefully, tactical mind reassessing the situation. What his men had thought was a vulnerable target, an isolated female rancher, was actually a highly trained military officer with specialized assets at her disposal. The woman had essentially established a military-grade defensive position on what appeared to be an ordinary cattle ranch. The territory is still valuable, he states after a long silence. That section of border gives us access to 3 major highways with minimal border patrol coverage. We've invested too much in establishing this corridor to abandon it because of one complication. The intelligence officer hesitates before responding. Sir, with respect, Major Reeves isn't just a complication. Her tactical background specifically counters our standard approach. Her dogs are trained to detect explosives, weapons, and personnel. The entire property is essentially a fortified compound with specialized countermeasures. Direct confrontation would require significant resources. Javier stands, moving to the wall-mounted map, displaying cartel territories and transport routes. The Reeves Ranch sits at a critical juncture, a natural blind spot in border surveillance, where terrain features create ideal crossing conditions. 3 months of planning, bribes to local officials, and careful intelligence gathering had gone into preparing this expansion. Too much to abandon because of unexpected resistance. We need that land, he decides, tracing the border with his finger. If we can't buy her out or frighten her off, we eliminate the problem, completely this time, with adequate resources. He turns back to the intelligence officer. Tactical mind, already formulating a new approach. Miguel and his team were captured because they underestimated their opponent. We won't make the same mistake. This operation needs specialized assets, men with similar training to hers. The Zetas, the intelligence officer suggests, referring to the former military operatives who had formed one of Mexico's most lethal cartel enforcement units. Javier nods slowly. Contact Eduardo. Tell him I need his direct involvement, not just his men. 12 operators minimum with full tactical package. His finger taps against the map where the Reeves Ranch is marked. And I want detailed satellite imagery of the entire property. If she's established defensive positions, I want them identified before we move. The intelligence officer pales slightly at the escalation. Eduardo charges 5 times our standard, a rate. His involvement would represent significant investment. The corridor is worth 10 times that amount in monthly revenue once established, Javier responds dismissively. This woman has forced our hand. She's not just defending her property, she's made a statement by capturing our men alive and ensuring their public arrest. She's challenging our expansion directly. He returns to his desk, decision made. 3 days for preparation. I want operational plans by tomorrow. This time, we don't send scouts. We deploy overwhelming force with clear objectives. Neutralize all resistance, secure the property, establish our presence before Border Patrol can respond. As the intelligence officer hurries to implement these orders, Javier studies the photograph of Major Reeves again. Something about her expression, the confident posture, the watchful eyes of someone accustomed to hostile environments triggers a moment of doubt. This woman had survived 3 tours in one of the most dangerous combat zones on Earth. She wouldn't be easily intimidated or outmaneuvered. "You've made a powerful enemy, Major," he murmurs to the photograph. "Let's see how your tactical expertise holds up against an army rather than a scouting party." Across the border, Cassandra Reeves kneels in the red Texas dirt, examining fresh tire tracks along her eastern fence line. The distinctive tread pattern matches vehicles typically used by cartel scouts, lightweight with enhanced suspension for rough terrain. Someone has been conducting surveillance, staying just outside her property boundary, but close enough to observe routine movements around the ranch. "What do you think, Ajax?" she asked the German shepherd, standing attentively beside her. "They're being more cautious this time." The dog's ears prick forward, his posture communicating alertness without alarm. After years of partnership in combat zones, Ajax's reactions provide Cass with tactical information as valuable as any technical sensor. His current demeanor suggests detection of recent human presence, but no immediate threat. Cass takes photos of the tracks with her phone before standing to survey the surrounding terrain. Her property sits in rolling borderland, not flat enough for easy surveillance, but not rugged enough to prevent access. Defensible, but requiring careful planning and resource allocation. After the failed raid 3 nights ago, she has no illusions about what comes next. "They'll be back," she murmurs, scanning the horizon, "and in greater numbers." Her satellite phone buzzes in her pocket, a secure line connected to a very short list of contacts. The caller ID displays Beckett, bringing a slight smile to her otherwise serious expression. "Perfect timing as usual, Captain," she answers, using her former teammate's military rank rather than his current federal title. "Just checking in on my favorite retired major," Riley Beckett responds, his voice carrying the distinctive accent of North Boston despite years in Texas. "Border patrols processed your party guests. Interesting characters, especially the one with the scorpion tattoo. Miguel Santana, former Mexican Special Forces, linked to at least 8 cartel operations north of the border." Cass absorbs this information with professional detachment. "They sent their A-team for initial assessment. That confirms my property has strategic value beyond typical smuggling operations. It's their patterns that concern me," Riley continues, his tone shifting to the more formal cadence he uses for official briefings. "These weren't random operators. Based on interrogation, they were specifically tasked with establishing a permanent outpost on your land, long-term infrastructure, not just a transit point. That explains their equipment and approach," Cass acknowledges, walking back toward her ranch house, with Ajax maintaining perfect heel position beside her. "They came prepared for occupation, not just reconnaissance." Riley's sigh carries clearly through the satellite connection. "Cass, I've got intelligence suggesting this isn't over. Significant chatter about retribution and resource allocation. As your friend, I'm suggesting you consider temporary relocation until we can coordinate a proper security response." Cass stops walking, her gaze sweeping across her family's land, the weathered ranch house her grandfather built, the fields where generations of Reeves had raised cattle, the distant mountains that had welcomed her home after years in combat zones. This property represents more than inheritance. It's the only place she's found peace after the chaos of war. "Not happening, Riley," she responds firmly. "I didn't survive 3 tours in Afghanistan to be driven off my own land by cartel thugs." "I figured you'd say that," he replies, resignation evident in his voice. "Which is why I've already put in for personal leave. I'll be there tomorrow with supplies." Cass feels a surge of emotion at this offer. Riley Beckett had been her second in command during her final deployment, a man who'd saved her life twice in firefights most civilians couldn't imagine. That he would risk his border patrol career to support her speaks to bonds forged in combat that never truly break. "I appreciate the thought," she says carefully, "but involving yourself officially would compromise your position. The cartel has informants everywhere, including federal agencies. Your career isn't worth much if I let my former CO get overrun because of bureaucratic concerns," Riley interrupts. "Besides, officially, I'm just visiting an old friend's ranch. Nothing in regulations against that." Cass knows better than to argue once Riley has made a decision. Their years working together had established patterns of mutual respect and understanding that transcended normal military hierarchy. "Bring extra ammunition for the M4 platforms," she concedes. "And any night vision equipment you can smuggle out without raising flags?" "Already packed," he confirms, the smile evident in his voice. "Along with a few other surprises courtesy of our mutual friends who still owe us favors. Oh, and Cass, satellite imagery shows increased activity at a known cartel compound 60 miles south of the border. Whatever they're planning, it's substantial." After ending the call, Cass continues toward the ranch house, her tactical mind already calculating defensive options. The failed raid had revealed critical information about her security measures, information the cartel would incorporate into their next attempt. She needs to adjust, to create new defensive layers that account for their updated intelligence. Inside, she activates her security system's main display, reviewing camera feeds that cover the property's perimeter. The technology, far beyond typical ranch security, represents a significant portion of her military retirement funds. Money well spent, given recent events. 3 of her 4 dogs rest in the main room, positioned to observe different approaches to the house while conserving energy. Brutus, the Dutch shepherd, maintains watch from an elevated platform near the front windows. Athena, the Belgian Malinois, rests near the rear entrance, while Colt, the black Labrador, lies beside the security console, his specialized explosive detection training, making him particularly valuable near potential entry points. Cass checks her watch, 2:15 p.m. Given typical cartel operational patterns, she estimates 5 days maximum before their next attempt. Likely less, given the public embarrassment of having 4 operators captured. Cartel leadership responds aggressively to challenges, especially those that threaten established trafficking routes. She moves to the reinforced cabinet beneath the stairs, retrieving a weathered topographical map of her property and the surrounding 5 miles. The map bears handwritten notations from previous security assessments, likely approach vectors, optimal defensive positions, response timelines for nearest law enforcement assets. As she spreads the map across her dining table, Ajax takes position beside her, his attentive presence a reminder of countless mission planning sessions in forward operating bases. Together, they had survived situations with far worse odds than a cartel incursion, often with fewer resources and less preparation time. "They'll come in force next time," she tells the dog, though the words are really for herself, a way of processing tactical realities out loud. No more 4-man reconnaissance teams, likely multiple vehicles, heavy weapons, possible explosive, ordnance, Ajax's ears prick forward at her serious tone, his eyes never leaving her face. After years working together, the dog recognizes mission planning when he sees it. "We've faced worse with less warning," she reminds him, finger tracing. Potential defensive positions on the map. This time, we have home field advantage. Outside, the Texas sun beats down on quiet ranch land that will soon become a battlefield. Cassandra Reeves, Major Reeves to those who served with her, Cass to her few friends, has already made her decision. The border waits silently as two forces prepare to collide, a cartel determined to secure valuable territory and a veteran who refuses to surrender the only peace she's found after years of war. The coming confrontation has become inevitable. The only questions remaining are when it will begin and who will be left standing when it ends. The unmarked Border Patrol vehicle kicks up dust as it travels the final stretch of road leading to the Double R Ranch. Behind the wheel, Captain Riley Beckett scans the surrounding terrain with the practiced eye of someone who has spent years in hostile environments. Nothing seems immediately out of place, but experience has taught him that appearances can be deceptive, especially in border territory. As he approaches the ranch's main gate, Riley notices the subtle security enhancements that would be invisible to less trained observers. Pressure plates disguised as ordinary ground, motion sensors camouflaged as rock formations, and carefully positioned cameras that provide overlapping fields of vision. The setup reminds him of forward operating bases in Afghanistan, where his unit had served under then-Major Cassandra Reeves. The gate opens automatically as he approaches, a silent acknowledgement that he's been observed and identified. Riley drives toward the ranch house, where Cass stands waiting on the porch, Ajax at attention by her side. Even from a distance, he recognizes the tactical assessment in her posture, the way she stands slightly angled to present minimal target profile, her right hand casually near her hip, where he knows she carries a concealed sidearm. Some habits never fade, even years after leaving combat zones. "You're 2 hours early," Cass calls as he parks and exits the vehicle. "Still keeping your commanding. Officers on their toes, I see." Riley grins, falling easily into the familiar rapport they'd developed through 3 deployments together. "Figured changing my approach pattern might confuse any observers. Besides, I brought presents." He gestures toward the vehicle's trunk. Cass steps forward to embrace him briefly, a gesture that speaks to the bond forged in combat rather than military formality. Ajax approaches next, recognizing Riley with an alert but relaxed posture that the former handler correctly interprets as acknowledgement of a familiar ally. "Good to see you too, old friend," Riley says, kneeling to greet the German Shepherd properly. The dog allows the brief contact before returning to his position beside Cass, ever the professional. "Let's get inside," Cass suggests, her eyes continuously scanning the horizon. "We have a lot to discuss, and I'd prefer to do it behind reinforced walls." Inside the ranch house, Riley takes in the transformation of what had once been a simple family home into a tactical operations center. Security monitors display camera feeds from across the property. Topographical maps cover the dining table, marked with defensive positions and potential approach vectors. The 3 other dogs acknowledge his arrival with professional interest. Before returning to their assigned watching positions, "You've been busy," Riley observes, noting the gun safe mounted beside the living room entrance and the reinforced shutters on all windows. "This place looks more like our phobie in Kandahar than a Texas cattle ranch." Paranoia pays off occasionally, Cass responds, moving to the security console to check perimeter readings. Those upgrades identified your Border Patrol colleagues making unscheduled drive-bys this past week. Curious timing. Riley's expression darkens. That's part of what I came to discuss. Not everyone in the regional office supported processing your cartel visitors through official channels. There were suggestions that a lone rancher should handle border issues through proper channels, rather than taking matters into her own hands. Meaning they have cartel informants in your office, Cass concludes without surprise. I expected as much. The real question is how high the influence reaches. High enough to concern me, Riley admits, setting his duffel bag on the table and unzipping it to reveal tactical equipment, which is why I brought these off the books. 4 military-grade encrypted comms units, latest generation night vision, and something special from our mutual friend at Fort Benning. He removes a specialized tactical vest designed specifically for military working dogs, advanced enough to include ballistic panels and mountable cameras. Latest generation canine tactical gear. Carson says they owe you for training their new handlers last spring. Cass examines the equipment with professional appreciation. The gear represents significant value and considerable risk for those who provided it. A testament to the respect she still commands within certain military circles. This will help, she acknowledges, already mentally allocating resources to defensive positions. But we're still looking at significant disadvantage if intelligence assessments are accurate. Riley unrolls satellite imagery across the tactical maps already covering the table. Latest scans from yesterday. That compound I mentioned has seen 18 vehicles arriving in the past 24 hours, not civilian transports. Tactical vehicles with reinforced frames and mounting points for heavy weapons. Cass studies the images, her expression hardening as she recognizes the signatures of serious preparations. They're mobilizing a small army, she observes, finger-tracing vehicle positions in the satellite photos. This isn't just about securing my property anymore. They're making a statement. The timing concerns me most, Riley continues, pointing to timestamps on the images. These vehicles arrived in staggered patterns over 18 hours. Professional deployment protocols to avoid. Attracting attention. Whoever's coordinating this operation has formal military training. Eduardo Vega, Cass states, drawing a surprised look from Riley. Border Patrol's not the only one with intelligence sources. Former Mexican Special Forces commander, now Cartel tactical advisor, his involvement represents significant escalation. Riley whistles softly. Vega's people don't handle routine operations. His teams specialize in high-value targets and territorial disputes that require overwhelming force. He pauses, choosing his next words carefully. Cass, this is beyond what we can handle with available resources. Even with my help and your dogs, we're looking at potentially 20 trained operators with vehicle support. Cass moves to the window, watching as the sun begins its descent toward the western horizon. When she speaks again, her voice carries the calm certainty Riley recognizes from their most dangerous deployments. Then we change the equation, she decides. We can't match their numbers or firepower, so we eliminate those advantages. Force them to fight on our terms, not theirs. She returns to the table, eyes scanning the property maps with renewed purpose. They expect to find a fortified position, a static defense they can overwhelm with superior numbers. Instead, we'll give them a tactical problem they're not prepared to solve. Riley recognizes the shift in her demeanor, the transition from venture to combat commander happening in real time before him. This was the Major Reeves, who had led their unit through situations with impossible odds in Afghanistan. The tactician whose unorthodox approaches had saved countless lives during operations that officially never happened. "What exactly did you have in mind?" he asks, already reaching for the tactical gear. Cass's finger traces specific points across the property map. "We transform the entire ranch into a series of kill zones and tactical problems. Use their expectations against them. They believe they're facing a single defended position with limited manpower. We'll make them question that assumption with every step they take onto my land." Ajax approaches, sensing the change in atmosphere. The other dogs follow, gathering around the table as if attending a pre-mission briefing. The scene would appear absurd to outsiders, 4 dogs seemingly participating in tactical planning, but Riley understands. These animals had been integral, parts of combat operations for years, their specialized training making them valuable assets rather than mere companions. "We have approximately 48 hours before they move," Cass continues, checking her watch. "Based on standard cartel protocols and the preparations visible in these images, they'll likely approach after midnight tomorrow using darkness as cover." Riley studies the defensive suggestions she's marking on the map. "You're planning something beyond standard perimeter defense. What exactly are we setting up here?" A slight smile touches Cass's lips, the expression Riley remembers, seeing before their most successful operations. "We're going to introduce Eduardo Vega to specialized canine tactical warfare, techniques developed for compound clearing and high-value target acquisition in hostile territory." She kneels beside Ajax, checking the fit of the tactical vest Riley brought. These dogs aren't just trained to attack or defend static positions. They're specialized tactical assets designed to function as force multipliers against numerically superior opponents. In Afghanistan, our unit demonstrated that 4 properly deployed K9 teams could effectively control engagements against forces 3 times their size by disrupting enemy formations and creating tactical confusion. Understanding dawns on Riley's face as he realizes what she's proposing. "You're not planning to just defend the property. You're going to hunt them actively once they cross your perimeter." "Precisely," Cass confirms, moving to her equipment cabinet and retrieving specialized communication gear designed to interface with the dog's tactical vests. Traditional defense fails against superior numbers, but active counter-offensive measures using specialized K9 units can negate numerical advantage by forcing opponents to divide attention and resources. Over the next hour, they transform preparation from theoretical to practical, checking equipment and establishing communications protocols. Riley watches with growing confidence as Cass transitions fully into her former role, the tactical commander emerging from beneath the ranch's exterior like a weapon being unsheathed. She tests each dog's specialized equipment, adjusting tactical vests and communication devices with practiced efficiency. Each animal responds to specialized commands with perfect discipline, demonstrating training far beyond what even most military units would recognize. Athena specializes in silent approach and neutralization, Cass explains, as the Belgian Malinois demonstrates clearing techniques around a practice structure. Brutus excels at perimeter containment and tracking fleeing targets. Colt's explosive detection capabilities provide tactical intelligence during operations, and Ajax, the German Shepherd, stands attentively at her side, embodying disciplined readiness, Ajax was my direct operational partner, she continues, a hint of pride entering her voice. 8 successful high-value target acquisitions in active combat zones. He can operate independently under tactical conditions that would challenge experienced human operators. Riley nods, remembering the legendary status Cass's primary canine partner had achieved within special operations circles. I recall the compound raid near Kandahar. 10 hostiles in reinforced positions. You and Ajax cleared it with minimal support, while the rest of us were pinned down by sniper fire. Different circumstances, similar tactical problem, Cass acknowledges. Opponents with superior numbers and position, requiring unconventional response to neutralize their advantages. As evening settles over the ranch, they finalize preparations, distributing equipment and establishing communications protocols. The tactical gear Riley brought transforms their capabilities significantly. Military-grade night vision, encrypted communications, and specialized K9 equipment, providing advantages that would normally be unavailable to civilians. We should get some rest while we can, Cass suggests, as darkness envelops the property. 2 hours on, 2 hours off rotation for sleep. I'll take first watch. Riley nods, recognizing the return to combat protocols they'd followed during deployments. As he prepares for his rest cycle, he watches Cass conduct a final equipment check with Ajax, handler and dog, moving with synchronized precision, born of years operating in life-or-death situations. They have no idea what they're walking into, do they? He observes, gesturing toward the southern horizon where cartel forces are undoubtedly making their own preparations. Cass glances up from adjusting Ajax's tactical harness, her expression revealing the focused clarity that comes with accepting combat as inevitable. That's their most significant tactical error, she confirms. They're preparing to overrun a rancher defending her property. Instead, they'll find themselves engaged with specialized K9 tactical warfare in terrain specifically prepared to negate their advantages. As Riley settles into his temporary quarters, he reflects on the transformation he's witnessed. The woman preparing defenses outside isn't Cassandra Reeves the rancher anymore. She's Major Reeves, K9 tactical commander, preparing her specialized unit for operations against a numerically superior force. The cartel forces gathering south of the border have no concept of what awaits them. They're about to experience firsthand why Major Reeves's K9 tactical units had earned their legendary reputation in the most dangerous combat zones on Earth. The skills and capabilities that had been merely hinted at during the failed raid are about to be demonstrated in their full, devastating potential. The true hunt hasn't even begun. The desert night wraps around Eduardo Vega like a familiar shroud as he studies the satellite imagery of the Reeves ranch displayed on his tactical tablet. 15 years in Mexican Special Forces, followed by 7 with cartel operations, had taught him to appreciate thorough intelligence before any engagement. The compound around him buzzes with controlled activity as his team makes final preparations. Weapons checks, communications tests, vehicle inspections. Professional discipline emanates from every corner. The property has 3 primary approaches, he explains to the assembled team leaders, finger-tracing routes on the digital map. Northern access via the main road, eastern approach through the dry creek bed, southern penetration point through the damaged fence section we identified yesterday. The men gathered around him, 12 experienced operators with backgrounds ranging from military special forces to specialized police units, absorb the information with professional attention. These aren't common cartel soldiers, but elite enforcers specifically selected for complex operations. Intelligence suggests 2 defenders, Eduardo continues, swiping to thermal imaging captured by surveillance drones. The woman, Cassandra. Reeves, former US military with specialized canine training, and 1 male visitor identified as Border Patrol agent Riley Beckett, currently on leave. Both have combat experience. Both should be considered high-level threats. He pauses, ensuring his next point receives proper emphasis. Most significantly, they have 4 military working dogs with specialized tactical training. The animals were directly involved in neutralizing our previous team. One of the team leaders, a former Mexican federal police commander, studies the thermal images with narrowed eyes. Dogs can be handled with proper equipment. We've brought sonic deterrents and specialized ammunition. Eduardo nods, acknowledging the preparation while maintaining his cautious approach. These aren't ordinary security dogs. They're military assets with specific tactical capabilities. Intel suggests they were part of specialized compound clearing operations in Afghanistan. He switches to property layout diagrams. Our primary objective remains securing the ranch as a forward operating base for cross-border activities. Secondary objective is neutralizing resistance completely to prevent further complications. Tertiary objective is securing any intelligence about law enforcement operations in the sector. The team leaders absorb these directives with professional nods. Eduardo has selected his force carefully, men who understand tactical objectives beyond simple violence, operators capable of complex mission parameters. We move in 3 hours, he concludes, checking his watch. 3 teams, synchronized approach from multiple vectors. Communication discipline is essential. Our previous operation was compromised, partly through radio intercepts. As the team leaders disperse to brief their units, Eduardo remains studying the satellite imagery. Something about the situation triggers his tactical instincts, warnings honed through years, operating in environments where the slightest miscalculation meant death. The ranch's defenses appear typical for an isolated border property, yet the previous team's complete failure suggests capabilities beyond what's immediately visible. "You're concerned," observes Carlos, his longtime second-in-command and the only person in the organization Eduardo trusts completely. "The intelligence doesn't align with operational outcomes," Eduardo admits, zooming in on the ranch house. 4 trained men neutralized without casualties by a single operator and her dogs. The tactical execution suggests capabilities beyond standard military training. Carlos studies the images thoughtfully. Special operations background? Perhaps, Eduardo acknowledges. But something more specific. The methodical neutralization of 4 separate targets using canine assets suggests specialized protocols. This wasn't improvised defense, it was practiced counter-offensive tactics. He closes the tablet, decision made. We proceed as planned, but with enhanced caution, full tactical gear, communication redundancies, and strict adherence to engagement. Protocols. This operation may present more complex challenges than Javier anticipates. As his team continues preparations in the compound, Eduardo mentally revises his tactical assessment. 20 years in combat operations had taught him to respect opponents who demonstrate unexpected capabilities. Whatever awaits at the Reeves ranch, he intends to be prepared for it. Midnight passes in silence across the Double R ranch as Cassandra Reeves completes her final equipment check. The tactical vest fits snugly over her torso. its familiar weight, triggering muscle memories from countless operations in far more hostile environments than Texas borderland. Beside her, Riley similarly prepares, checking his communication gear and weapon with practiced efficiency. 3 vehicles approaching from the south, he reports, studying the thermal imaging display. Maintaining blackout conditions, approximately 3 miles out and closing. Movement patterns suggest tactical approach rather than direct assault. Cass nods, unsurprised by the professional discipline evident in the cartel's approach. They've learned from the previous failure, this won't be a straightforward confrontation. Around them, the 4 dogs wait in perfect tactical formation, each wearing specialized equipment that transforms them from ordinary animals into military assets. Their disciplined stillness speaks to thousands of hours of specialized training. These aren't pets straining at leashes, but operators awaiting deployment orders. Initiate Phase 1, Cass directs, her voice shifting to the command tone that had once guided specialized units through the most dangerous regions of Afghanistan. Defensive positions, communication protocols active. Riley acknowledges with a crisp nod before moving toward his assigned position at the eastern approach. Their defense plan doesn't rely on concentrating forces around the ranch house as the cartel would expect. Instead, they've prepared a series of tactical problems designed to disrupt coordinated assault and create favorable engagement conditions, despite being significantly outnumbered. Cass kneels beside Ajax, checking his tactical vest one final time. The specialized equipment includes encrypted communication devices, lightweight body armor, and attachment points for tactical tools. More importantly, it contains technology designed to extend the dog's already formidable capabilities. Thermal imaging transmitted to Cass's tactical headset, allowing her to see through Ajax's perspective when operating independently. "Ready for work?" she asks quietly, running her hand along the shepherd's powerful shoulder. Ajax's attention remains absolute, his body communicating readiness more clearly than words ever could. This isn't their first combat operation together, merely the first on American soil. Through her tactical headset, Riley's voice comes through with perfect clarity. "Contact! 3 vehicles have stopped approximately half a mile from the south fence line. Dismounting personnel visible through thermal. I count 16 individuals. Tactical distribution suggests 3 teams with specialized equipment." "Acknowledged," Cass responds, moving to the security console to confirm his assessment through property sensors. The thermal signatures clearly indicate a professional approach, tactical spacing between operators, disciplined movement patterns, specialized equipment profiles. They're running a coordinated multi-vector assault, professional leadership. She switches her communication channel to broadcast to all their defensive positions. Execute Nightshade protocols. Phase 1 active. Throughout the property, pre-positioned countermeasures activate in carefully timed sequence. Not traditional defenses, but specialized disruption measures designed to degrade the cartel team's coordination and tactical awareness. Frequency jammers targeting their communication systems. Specialized ground sensors providing real-time intelligence on approach vectors. Terrain-integrated staging positions that offer defensible firing points while remaining practically invisible to approaching forces. Through her tactical display, Cass watches the cartel teams separate into assault formations, each taking distinct approach vectors toward the property. Their movement disciplines and equipment distribution confirm her earlier assessment. These aren't ordinary cartel enforcers, but specialized operators with formal training. Team 1 approaching from the east through the dry creek bed. Riley reports from his observation position. Team 2 moving directly toward the main house from the south. Team 3 establishing what appears to be a containment position to prevent escape toward the western property line. Standard tactical approach for assaulting a defended position with unknown resistance capabilities. Cass recognizes the formation from her own training. Establish containment, approach from multiple vectors, maintain tactical flexibility. Whoever commands these forces understands professional engagement protocols. They're expecting us to concentrate defense around the house, she observes, tracking thermal signatures through her tactical display. Conventional approach against what they assume is a conventional defense. The slightest smile touches her lips as she turns to her gathered canine unit. Time to introduce them to unconventional response. Cass activates her specialized command channel, voice clear and controlled as she issues precise instructions. Athena, eastern approach, disrupt and identify. Brutus, western perimeter, containment protocol. Colt, southern vector, detection priority. Ajax with me for direct engagement. Each dog acknowledges the commands through body language before moving with silent efficiency toward their assigned positions. Unlike conventional attack dogs that would charge directly at threats, these animals implement complex tactical protocols, movement, designed to remain undetected, positioning for maximum effectiveness, coordination with human operators through specialized training and equipment. They've reached the outer perimeter, Riley reports, his voice tight with controlled tension. Passing the first sensor line now. Cass checks her weapon before moving toward her predetermined position. Engage disruption countermeasures. Phase 2 active. Across the property, carefully concealed devices activate in synchronized sequence. Not lethal measures, but tactical disruption technologies developed for special operations. Directional sound projectors broadcasting disorienting frequencies, specialized lighting systems designed to degrade night vision effectiveness, terrain integrated, smoke dispensers releasing patented compounds that interfere with both visual and thermal imaging without compromising their own specialized equipment. Through her tactical display, Cass watches as the carefully orchestrated countermeasures begin, affecting the cartel teams. Their previously disciplined formations show signs of hesitation as communication difficulties and sensory disruption create tactical confusion. The professional spacing between operators tightens as uncertainty grows, creating vulnerability clusters that wouldn't exist under normal conditions. Eastern Team has deployed counter-electronic measures, Riley updates, his tactical assessment remaining professional despite the growing tension. They're better equipped than anticipated. Technical capabilities suggest specialized support. Acknowledged. Cass responds, already adapting her approach. Implement secondary protocols. Prepare for direct engagement. She taps her specialized communication device twice, activating the link with Athena's tactical system. Through the dog's mounted camera, Cass observes the Eastern Cartel team attempting to re-establish formation after encountering the first wave of disruption measures. Their equipment confirms initial assessment. Military-grade tactical gear, specialized weapons, professional discipline, even under degraded conditions. Cass issues specialized commands through her tactical system, not verbal instructions, but precisely coded signals developed through years of operational refinement. Athena responds with immediate precision, adjusting her approach vector to exploit identified vulnerabilities in the Cartel team's formation. The Belgian Malinois moves like a shadow through the darkness, specialized training and equipment allowing her to navigate between sensor zones with unnerving accuracy. She doesn't charge directly at the Cartel operators. That would waste her tactical advantage and potentially expose her to defensive fire. Instead, she implements specialized engagement protocols developed for asymmetric warfare against numerically superior forces. The first Cartel operator realizes something is wrong when his communication device is torn from his tactical vest with surgical precision, not random animal attack, but targeted equipment neutralization executed with military efficiency. Before he can alert his teammates, Athena has already disappeared into the darkness, moving to her next designated target. Similar scenes unfold across the property as the specialized canine unit implements coordinated tactical engagement. Brutus disrupts the Western containment team with precisely timed harassment maneuvers designed not to injure, but to degrade operational effectiveness, appearing and disappearing between defensive positions, creating the impression of multiple threats where only one exists, forcing the Cartel operators to waste resources securing positions against phantom attackers. Through her tactical display, Cass observes the mounting confusion among the Cartel forces as their coordinated assault dissolves into disjointed response against threats they can barely identify, much less effectively engage. Their superior numbers and firepower become increasingly irrelevant as tactical cohesion deteriorates. They're implementing countermeasures, Riley warns through the tactical channel. Eastern team leader has recognized the pattern. They're adjusting formation to mitigate canine disruption tactics. Cass watches through her display as one of the Cartel teams shifts into a tighter defensive formation, back-to-back positioning that limits vulnerable angles of approach, coordinated fields of fire that reduce exploitation opportunities. Someone among them recognizes specialized canine engagement protocols and has training to counter them. Identified probable command element, she responds, marking the position on their shared tactical display. Demonstrating familiarity with counter-canine tactics, likely former military with specialized training. The tactical situation evolves rapidly as both sides adjust to changing conditions. The Cartel forces, initially disoriented by unexpected resistance, begin implementing more disciplined response measures under their commander's direction. The specialized disruption that had initially degraded their effectiveness becomes less impactful as they adapt to the unconventional defense. Cass recognizes the tactical inflection point, the moment when initial advantage begins to erode as a competent opponent adjusts to unexpected conditions. In conventional engagement, this would indicate the need to retreat and regroup, but conventional tactics don't apply to specialized canine operations. Execute shadow hunt protocols, she directs through the command channel. Phase 3 active, across. The property, the canine unit acknowledges the command through their specialized systems. The tactical approach shifts from disruption to direct engagement, not random attacks, but precisely coordinated neutralization of identified high-value targets within the Cartel formation. Priorities established through tactical assessment, execution delivered through years of specialized training. Cass moves from her observation position, Ajax at her side, maintaining perfect tactical synchronization. Together, they advance toward the southern approach, where thermal imaging indicates the cartel's command element has established their primary coordination position. The true capabilities of Major Cassandra Reeves and her specialized canine tactical unit are about to be demonstrated in their full operational capacity. The skills previously glimpsed during the failed raid will now be revealed in comprehensive deployment against a force that, despite its superior numbers and equipment, remains unprepared for the specialized warfare about to engulf them. The night erupts in tactical chaos as Phase 3 begins. Not random violence, but precisely engineered combat asymmetry designed to transform numerical disadvantage into operational superiority through specialized K9 tactical warfare. Eduardo Vega crouches behind the tactical vehicle, reassessing the rapidly deteriorating situation through specialized optics. What should have been a straightforward operation, overwhelming force against minimal resistance, has transformed into something that triggers memories of his most challenging military engagements. His three carefully positioned teams now operate in defensive postures rather than coordinated assault, responding to threats that materialize and vanish with unnerving precision. Central Command, status report, he demands through his backup. Communication system, the primary channels, having been systematically degraded by sophisticated countermeasures minutes into their approach. Eastern team compromised, comes the tense response from his second-in-command. 3 operators neutralized, non-lethal but combat ineffective. Someone is systematically targeting our communication equipment and night vision systems. Eduardo switches channels. Western team, report position and status. Defensive posture at coordinates 32.4, responds a strained voice. Under harassment from multiple vectors, unable to maintain containment position. Request permission to fall back and regroup. Before Eduardo can respond, the tactical display on his specialized tablet flickers, momentarily displaying what appears to be a military insignia before returning to standard operational interface. Not random electronic interference, but deliberate system penetration. Someone with access to sophisticated electronic warfare capabilities is actively compromising their tactical network. All teams, communication discipline, fall back to secondary. Positions regroup at Rally Point Delta, Eduardo commands, recognizing the need to reset tactical parameters. The operation has encountered resistance far beyond what intelligence indicated was present on this isolated ranch. As his operators acknowledge and begin executing the tactical withdrawal, Eduardo reviews what limited information remains reliable. The property's defenses extend well beyond conventional security measures. The resistance demonstrates coordination and capabilities consistent with specialized military units rather than civilian defense. Most significantly, the K9 elements are operating with tactical precision that suggests advanced training and specialized equipment. A sudden movement to his left triggers instant response as Eduardo drops to combat position, weapon aligned with the threat before conscious thought registers. The figure approaching isn't human but canine, a massive German shepherd moving with the disciplined purpose that distinguishes military working dogs from ordinary animals. What captures Eduardo's attention, however, isn't the animal itself, but its equipment. A specialized tactical vest containing technology he recognizes from his special forces background. Contact, K9 unit, advanced tactical configuration. He reports calmly, maintaining visual on the animal while scanning for its handler. Military working dogs rarely operate independently unless specifically trained for autonomous missions. The shepherd stops precisely 30 meters away, not random positioning but tactical standoff distance beyond effective engagement range for most sidearms, but within visual identification parameters. The animal's behavior communicates not aggression, but assessment. Head slightly tilted, ears forward, body balanced for immediate movement in any direction. Fascinating, Eduardo murmurs. Despite the tactical situation, professional appreciation momentarily overriding operational focus. Autonomous tactical positioning. You're not just any military dog, are you? As if responding to his assessment, the shepherd tilts its head slightly, the motion activating something on its tactical vest. A small red light blinks 3 times before stabilizing, not random electronic activity, but deliberate communication protocols. Eduardo's tactical training immediately registers the significance. Command element, be advised, we are facing specialized K9 assets with autonomous capabilities and advanced communication systems. These aren't standard military working dogs. They're something significantly more advanced. Before his team can acknowledge, a figure emerges from the darkness beyond the shepherd, a woman moving with the fluid efficiency that marks elite operators. Her stance, equipment, and tactical approach communicate extensive combat experience. This isn't a rancher defending property, but a specialized operator implementing tactical protocols. Eduardo Vega. She addresses him directly, voice projecting calm authority. Former Commander, Mexican Special Forces 14th Tactical Unit, currently employed by the Sonora Cartel as operational advisor and direct action specialist. Her perfect Spanish carries no hint of accent, suggesting language training beyond basic proficiency. Eduardo maintains his tactical position while processing this unexpected development. The woman knows not just his name, but his military background and current operational role, intelligence that should be highly classified. You appear to have me at a disadvantage, he responds in English, tactical mind calculating engagement options while maintaining verbal communication. Major Cassandra Reeves, she replies, switching effortlessly to English. Former Commander, 38th Specialized K9 Tactical Unit, 3 tours in Afghanistan, implementing direct action missions against high-value targets in non-permissive environments. The designation triggers immediate recognition. Eduardo had encountered references to this unit during joint operational briefings between Mexican and U.S. Special Forces, a specialized command implementing unconventional warfare through advanced K9 integration. Their operational records remained highly classified, but their reputation had achieved almost mythical status among special operations communities. The ghost handlers, he states, professional respect evident despite the adversarial situation. Your unit specialized in autonomous K9 deployment against numerically superior forces in complex environments. 8 successful compound clearing operations in Kandahar province alone. Major Reeves acknowledges this assessment with a slight nod, the German Shepherd maintaining perfect position beside her. We developed specialized protocols for asymmetric engagement using K9 assets as force multipliers. Your current tactical situation demonstrates several of these protocols in active implementation. Eduardo reassesses the operational environment with this new information. The tactical confusion affecting his teams, the systematic degradation of their communications and night vision capabilities, the precision targeting of key equipment rather than personnel, all consistent with documented outcomes from specialized canine tactical operations against insurgent compounds in Afghanistan. Your dogs are systematically isolating my operators and degrading their tactical capabilities rather than directly engaging them, he observes. Professional analysis temporarily superseding combat response. Pressure point exploitation rather than direct neutralization. Precisely, Major Reeves confirms, her posture remaining tactically sound despite the conversation. My unit doesn't require numerical superiority to establish tactical dominance. We exploit operational vulnerabilities through specialized K9 implementation, transforming conventional force disadvantage into asymmetric advantage. The tactical implications of this revelation ripple through Eduardo's operational assessment. His 16 operators, despite their training and equipment, have effectively been countered by a specialized 4-dog unit implementing tactical protocols specifically designed for this type of engagement. The operation isn't just compromised, it was effectively countered before it began. Your current tactical position is untenable, Commander Vega. Major Reeves continues, using his former military rank rather than cartel title. 7 of your operators have been effectively neutralized, without serious injury. Your communication systems are compromised. Your night vision capabilities have been systematically degraded. Tactical cohesion has collapsed across all 3 teams. As if confirming her assessment, Eduardo's tactical tablet displays updated positioning, showing his remaining operational elements scattered across the property in defensive positions. Coordination effectively eliminated. The specialized operation he had carefully planned has disintegrated into isolated pockets of resistance. A professional assessment would suggest tactical withdrawal to preserve remaining assets, she adds, the statement delivered not as threat, but as operational analysis from one commander to another. Eduardo weighs his options with cold precision. Continuing the operation under current conditions would likely result in complete neutralization of his force without achieving operational objectives. Tactical withdrawal presents career complications with cartel leadership, but preserves capabilities for potential future engagement under more favorable conditions. Your assessment has merit, he acknowledges, tactical pragmatism overriding mission parameters. However, cartel leadership rarely accepts operational failure without significant consequences. Something shifts in Major Reeves's expression, not tactical adjustment, but recognition of professional dilemma familiar to specialized operators who have witnessed organizational politics override tactical reality. Your real tactical problem isn't my K9 unit, Commander Vega, she observes. Its operational expectations disconnected from ground reality. Your cartel employers dispatched you to secure territory without providing accurate intelligence about defensive capabilities. The German Shepherd beside her maintains perfect tactical positioning, eyes never leaving Eduardo despite the conversation. The animal's disciplined focus reminds him of elite human operators he had commanded during his military career. Absolute attention without wasted motion or unnecessary aggression. Tell me, Commander, Major Reeves continues, did your employers mention that this property is defended by a specialized canine tactical unit with 3 tours in direct action operations? Did they inform you that the terrain has been systematically prepared with countermeasures specifically designed to degrade superior force advantages? Or were you simply told to secure an isolated ranch owned by a female veteran? The question strikes with precision accuracy, confirming Eduardo's growing suspicion that this operation was compromised from inception. Cartel intelligence had significantly underestimated defensive capabilities, resulting in operational parameters that failed to account for specialized resistance. Operational intelligence suggested minimal defensive capabilities, he admits, professional honesty momentarily overriding cartel loyalty. 2 defenders with military backgrounds, 4 trained dogs, standard ranch security. Nothing indicating specialized tactical unit with advanced capabilities. Major Reeves nods, unsurprised by this confirmation. Your employers made a critical intelligence error, Commander. They identified me as a military veteran, but failed to investigate my specific operational background or current capabilities. They saw an isolated female rancher, rather than recognizing a specialized tactical commander with deployed combat experience. Through his tactical headset, Eduardo receives increasingly desperate reports from his remaining operators. Systematic isolation, equipment failure, disorientation caused by specialized countermeasures. The operation isn't just compromised, it's approaching complete tactical collapse. You have approximately 7 minutes before Border Patrol tactical units arrive. Major Reeves informs him, checking her watch with casual precision. Not standard patrol elements, but specialized border tactical response, already mobilized and inbound. Their arrival will significantly complicate your extraction options. Eduardo processes this information with professional detachment. If accurate, this timeline transforms tactical withdrawal from preferred option to operational necessity. Engagement with federal tactical units would escalate the situation beyond cartel risk tolerance, potentially triggering international incidents that organizational leadership specifically avoids. You've contacted federal tactical response teams, he states, reassessing extraction priorities based on this development. Automatically when your teams crossed my property boundary, she confirms. Specialized sensors integrated with emergency notification protocols. Your operational timeline has been compromised from inception. The tactical implications crystallize with perfect clarity. This operation was effectively countered before it began. Defensive measures, tactical response, and federal notification all implemented with professional precision that indicates extensive preparation and specialized capabilities. Your unit's reputation was well earned, Major, Eduardo acknowledges. Tactical pragmatism, accepting operational reality. I'm implementing immediate extraction to preserve remaining assets. Major Reeves nods, professional courtesy between former specialized commanders temporarily transcending adversarial positions. Withdraw directly south. Maintain 100-meter spacing between elements. Avoid eastern approach, where federal units are inbound. You have approximate 6-minute window before aerial assets establish containment perimeter. The tactical advice, delivered with professional precision rather than antagonistic intent, confirms Eduardo's assessment of Major Reeves as a specialized commander rather than typical opposition. She isn't seeking to maximize cartel casualties, but to achieve tactical objectives with minimal escalation. hallmark of professional military leadership rather than personal vengeance. Eduardo activates his backup communication system, broadcasting on all remaining functional channels. All units, immediate extraction, protocol Delta, rally point Echo, tactical withdrawal, 6-minute window. As his remaining operators acknowledge and begin implementing extraction procedures, Eduardo maintains tactical positioning while addressing Major Reeves directly. Your defensive implementation was exceptional, Major. Professional respect from one commander to another. Your tactical approach was equally professional, Commander, she acknowledges. Under different circumstances, with accurate intelligence and appropriate force composition, outcomes might differ. The mutual professional assessment, divorced from personal animosity, reflects shared understanding of tactical realities that transcend individual engagements. Both recognize the operation's failure resulted not from tactical execution, but from fundamental intelligence errors and force misallocation. This territory isn't worth the operational costs your employers would incur to secure it, Major Reeves adds, her tone shifting from tactical to strategic assessment. 4 specialized canine tactical operators with combat deployment experience, defensive terrain prepared with military countermeasures, and federal tactical response integration. The operational mathematics don't justify continued engagement. Eduardo processes this strategic assessment while monitoring his team's extraction progress through remaining functional systems. The Major's analysis aligns with his own emerging conclusions. This property represents significantly greater operational challenges than intelligence had indicated, requiring force composition and tactical approaches beyond current cartel capabilities. I'll include these factors in my operational debrief, he responds. Professional honesty, acknowledging tactical reality, despite potential career implications. Cartel leadership rarely accepts operational failures without consequences, but providing accurate assessment of defensive capabilities might mitigate personal repercussions. As distant sirens become audible across the property, Eduardo initiates his personal extraction, maintaining tactical awareness of both Major Reeves and her specialized canine partner. Neither moves to interfere with his withdrawal, another indication of professional military discipline rather than aggressive response. Until circumstances change, Major, he acknowledges as he retreats toward the southern perimeter where his remaining operators are implementing extraction protocols. They always do, Commander, she responds, the German Shepherd maintaining perfect position beside her as they watch his departure. But tactical realities remain constant, regardless of organizational directives. Eduardo Vega, former Special Forces commander, now directing cartel tactical operations, withdraws from the Reeves ranch with professional discipline despite operational failure. His assessment has fundamentally shifted. This isn't merely defended territory, but a specialized tactical environment occupied by a commander with capabilities exceeding current cartel response options. Behind him, Major Cassandra Reeves and her specialized K9 tactical unit maintain vigilant watch. Their true capabilities now revealed not through boasting or unnecessary violence, but through precise implementation of specialized warfare protocols developed in the harshest combat environments on Earth. Dawn breaks over the Double R Ranch, painting the desert landscape in hues of amber and gold as Border Patrol tactical teams complete their final sweep of the property. 6 hours have passed since the cartel forces initiated their hasty withdrawal, leaving behind abandoned equipment and 3 wounded operators, 2 severely incapacitated to extract. The federal response, while prompt by rural standards, had arrived just minutes after the main cartel element had crossed back across the border, exactly as Cass had calculated when providing Eduardo Vega his 6-minute extraction window. Standing on her porch, coffee mug warming her hands against the morning chill, Cassandra Reeves watches the coordinated activity with the detached assessment of a commander observing battlefield aftermath rather than a civilian witnessing law enforcement. Response. Her 4 dogs maintain relaxed but vigilant positions around the property, their tactical vests removed, but professional discipline still evident in their positioning and alertness. Quite the night, Riley comments, joining her with his own steaming mug. His tactical gear has been stowed, replaced by civilian clothes, but the alertness in his posture reveals the operator beneath the casual appearance. Border Tactical counted 16 separate entry points and evidence of at least 20 operators based on equipment signatures and tactical positioning. Largest cross-border incursion they've documented in this sector. Cass nods, unsurprised by the assessment. Eduardo Vega doesn't deploy without significant resources. His operational history with Mexican Special Forces demonstrated consistent preference for overwhelming force, applied with precision rather than economy of action with minimal assets. Riley studies her with professional appreciation. You recognized him specifically during active engagement. Tactical movement patterns are distinctive at command level, she explains, sipping her coffee while maintaining visual tracking of the Border Patrol teams. Vega's approach vectors and communication protocols matched documented Special Forces methodologies, but with specific adaptations I'd encountered during joint exercises between our units in 2017. The tactical signature was distinctive enough to confirm identity once visual confirmation became available. Before Riley can respond, a black SUV with federal government plates approaches the ranch house, dust billowing behind its wheels as it navigates the access road with practiced efficiency. The vehicle stops in the yard, and a man in his 50s emerges, crisp khaki uniform, bearing the insignia of Border Patrol senior leadership, his bearing communicating military background despite the civilian agency credentials. Chief Dawson, Riley acknowledges, straightening slightly as his superior approaches. Didn't expect Sector Command to make personal appearance. Chief Thomas Dawson surveys the property with experienced assessment before addressing them. When 16 cartel tactical operators retreat across the border, leaving equipment and wounded behind, it justifies direct attention. His gaze shifts to Cass, professional respect evident. Major Reeves, been following your career since that compound clearing operation outside Kandahar in 2018. Your unit's tactical innovations changed how we approach asymmetric engagement parameters. Cass accepts the professional acknowledgement with a slight nod. The 38th developed specialized protocols out of necessity rather than theoretical application. Adaptive response to operational constraints in non-permissive environments. Those adaptive responses apparently translate effectively to border defense scenarios, Dawson observes, gesturing toward the abandoned cartel equipment being catalogued by his tactical teams. My operators report evidence of systematic tactical degradation across all 3 cartel elements: communications disruption, sensory disorientation, precision targeting of command elements, classic canine tactical protocols implemented with notable effectiveness. His assessment delivered with professional precision rather than casual observation, confirms Cass's initial impression of Dawson as someone with specialized knowledge beyond typical agency leadership. You're familiar with canine tactical deployment beyond standard patrol applications, she notes. Dawson smiles slightly. 30 years with Border Patrol, but my first deployment was with Army Ranger canine elements before specialized tactical units were formally established. I recognize the operational signatures of advanced canine implementation when I see them. He gestures toward Ajax, who maintains watchful position near the porch steps. That shepherd has operational discipline I've rarely seen outside specialized military units. The professional assessment triggers a slight relaxation in Cass's tactical awareness. Dawson isn't just another administrator, but a former operator who understands specialized capabilities and tactical realities beyond bureaucratic perspectives. Your tactical response prevented what could have been significant escalation, Dawson continues, his tone shifting from professional assessment to official capacity. However, it also creates certain complications regarding ongoing cartel operations. In this sector, Riley tenses slightly beside her. Sir, Major Reeves responded to direct incursion on her property with appropriate defensive measures. All actions fall within established legal parameters for civilian defense. Ease down, Beckett, Dawson responds with the casual authority of a commander addressing experienced subordinates. No one suggesting impropriety in defensive response. The complications arise from strategic implications rather than tactical execution. He turns his attention fully to Cass. The cartel tasked Eduardo Vega specifically for this operation. That represents significant resource allocation and strategic commitment. His operational failure creates complicated dynamics within Cartel. Leadership structures that may manifest in escalated response beyond traditional territorial incursions. Cass processes this assessment with tactical pragmatism. You're suggesting potential transition from territorial acquisition to targeted elimination, personal, rather than strategic motivation driving operational parameters. Precisely, Dawson confirms. Cartel leadership, particularly Javier Mendoza, who authorized this operation, typically responds to significant operational failures with escalated commitment rather than tactical withdrawal. Your successful defense hasn't just denied them territory, it's created internal organizational pressure that historically manifests in personalized response. The tactical implications crystallize with perfect clarity. Eduardo Vega now faces organizational consequences for operational failure. Javier Mendoza must demonstrate commitment to territorial objectives despite initial setbacks. Both dynamics create motivation for continued operations against the ranch, with parameters potentially shifting from acquisition to elimination. You're suggesting they'll return, Cass states, tactical mind already calculating potential response options and timeline projections. With absolute certainty, Dawson confirms without hesitation. The only variables are time frame and approach methodology. Territorial imperative remains unchanged. This section of border represents significant value for trafficking operations. Your successful defense adds complications but doesn't eliminate strategic motivation. Riley joins the tactical assessment, professional experience temporarily superseding his agency role. Standard cartel response protocols would suggest 48 to 72 hours for reassessment and resource reallocation before subsequent operation. Given Vega's direct involvement and professional background, likely operational adjustments would include specialized assets beyond conventional cartel enforcement elements. My assessment aligns with yours. Dawson agrees, his expression revealing the tactical commander beneath the administrative role. Which brings me to the purpose of my visit beyond standard incident response. He surveys the property again, his assessment now clearly focused on defensive capabilities rather than incident aftermath. Your tactical implementation was exceptional. Major, 4 specialized canine assets with advanced handler coordination, effectively neutralizing superior force with minimal collateral impact. Classic asymmetric response with optimal outcome parameters. The professional assessment, delivered with technical precision rather than casual compliment, confirms Cass's impression of Dawson as someone with specialized operational background, beyond his administrative credentials. However, he continues, subsequent cartel response will likely involve resource allocation beyond current defensive capabilities. Eduardo Vega doesn't accept operational failure without adaptation. His military background and professional pride suggest significant tactical adjustments in future engagement parameters. Cass recognizes the assessment as tactically sound rather than administrative overreach. Despite their successful defense, the operational realities suggest escalating challenges rather than conclusive resolution. You're offering resources, she observes, recognizing the underlying purpose behind Dawson's personal appearance and tactical assessment. Cass checks her watch, tactical mind already calculating next steps based on established timelines and operational parameters. They'll learn soon enough. Dawson's intelligence suggests continued cartel movement in the eastern sector near Miller's. Abandoned property, potential staging area for cross-border trafficking approximately 12 miles from our position. Riley recognizes the tactical assessment beneath casual observation. Operational planning already transitioning from defensive to offensive parameters. Reconnaissance requirements before potential engagement. Standard K9 tactical protocols. For unknown territory surveillance. Precisely, Cass confirms, the ranch's exterior fully replaced by the tactical commander's focused clarity. Athena and Brutus for initial assessment, communications package with thermal capabilities, restricted engagement parameters for intelligence gathering rather than direct action during first operational phase. As Riley nods in professional agreement, Cass surveys her property with renewed tactical awareness. The failed cartel raid hasn't just been repelled, it has triggered implementation of specialized warfare capabilities against an adversary unprepared for such response. Eduardo Vega and Javier Mendoza intended to secure territory for cartel operations. Instead, they've activated a specialized K9 tactical unit with combat experience, federal resources, and operational authorization beyond civilian constraints. The cartel's tactical error wasn't just underestimating a single property's defenses. It was awakening specialized warfare capabilities specifically designed for the type of asymmetric engagement that defines border conflict. What began as territorial acquisition has evolved into strategic confrontation between cartel expansion and specialized counter-operations implemented through unconventional assets. Major Cassandra Reeves and her elite K9 tactical unit have transitioned from defensive to offensive posture, their specialized capabilities now directed toward proactive counter-cartel operations throughout the surrounding territory. The tactical advantage established during the failed raid will now be leveraged across expanded operational parameters with enhanced resources and intelligence support. The hunted has become the hunter, and the real operation has only just begun. Conclusion 1. Month after the failed raid, Javier Mendoza stands before Cartel leadership, explaining the unexplainable. How 3 of their smuggling operations have been dismantled, their drug shipments seized, and 8 of their best men captured without a single shot fired. Intelligence reports describe shadows moving through the night, accompanied by specialized canine units that materialize and vanish like ghosts. Meanwhile, at the Double R Ranch, Cassandra Reeves reviews tactical maps with Riley and Border Patrol Chief Dawson. Her canine unit has transformed the entire sector, systematically disrupting cartel operations with surgical precision. What began as a simple property defense has evolved into a specialized counter-cartel campaign that has effectively secured a 20-mile stretch of border. Eduardo Vega, studying satellite imagery of their latest failed operation, finally understands the full magnitude of his tactical error. They hadn't merely targeted a random female veteran with some military dogs. They had awakened a specialized warfare unit specifically designed for asymmetric combat against superior numbers. As dusk falls across the borderland, Cass stands on her porch, her 4 dogs alert at her side. The cartel had made a critical miscalculation. They saw an isolated woman on a ranch and perceived vulnerability. Instead, they found a tactical commander with specialized capabilities beyond anything they were prepared to face. The border remains quiet tonight. The hunters have become the hunted. If you enjoyed this story of unexpected strength and tactical brilliance, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more thrilling content. Comment below which part of Major Reeves's operation impressed you most, and share with someone who appreciates stories of those who should never be underestimated.